All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. As I was just stating, I think that we'll see for the panelists, I think we'll see a lot more people roll in as folks get their weekend started. But for everyone who's already here, thank you for being here on time. We're excited to have Dig Insights here to talk about the Jobs to Be Done framework this morning. And if you're not already part of the Startup CPG Slack, make sure you jump in there over the next week. This team is also going to be accessible in the Slack for questions. They're accessible, year round, but we're going to be doing kind of like an Ask Me Anything sort of activation this coming week around this topic. So, ask your questions while we're in the session now. If things come up later as well, you'll have this team accessible in the Slack community. With that said, I will hand things over to Michael, and we will let you guys take it from here.
All right. Well, thank you, Peter. And thank you everyone who took the time to, oops, my Google Home is now yelling at me. Thank you everyone who took the time to be here on this. I've actually been here over a year and I still haven't set up my Google Home. So there's an insight there, right? I just plugged it in and never actually set it up to do anything. So anyways, thank you everyone for making the time to be here. I remember when Saturday mornings were about cartoons. I can't say this is going to be as fun as that, but hopefully we will keep it fun and engaging and a useful use of your time. I don't think we will need the entire 3 hours. I'd actually thought at the beginning that we might be able to have some dynamic discussion, but I think the platform is primarily going to support chat, which might make things a little faster, but will limit the interactivity a little bit. Having said that, there are a few times when I'm hoping you will actually contribute to the chat. Previously, I was going to ask you to turn on your computers and talk, or turn on your cameras rather and talk. So it's going to be a lot less pressure than that. It'll be a lot easier just to submit the chat. So please do participate. It should make it a little bit more engaging and a little bit more rewarding for you as well. So we're here to talk about jobs to be done. A little bit about myself just before I get into it. So I am one of the founders of a company called Dig Insights. We have created a tech platform called Upside. So we ourselves are innovating and using a jobs to be done framework as part of that innovation. I can show you Upside a little bit later because it is a consumer insights platform, and I actually used Upside as part of preparing for this presentation. It may also be relevant to you and your businesses. I'm not here for a hard sell, but it may be. And actually, on the point of not being here for a hard sell, at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do partner with startup companies to do free research. So that's really not a hard sell. So if you are interested in participating in that, I'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's essentially a way for small companies to get some consumer insights to help them direct their businesses without actually paying anything. Okay, so we're going to jump right into it. So I always start on a down note. I'm known as a buzzkill at any party I go to. I'm going to start on the down note that innovation is difficult, and probably you're here because you're experiencing some of those challenges. It's actually easy to innovate. It's hard to innovate well. So this is a McKinsey & Company poll with global executives. So 84% say innovation is extremely important to their growth, but 94% are dissatisfied with their organization's innovation performance. Their organizations are innovating, they're just not happy with how they're performing. So if you're having that struggle, you are certainly not alone. I wanted to kick off, so here's where I'm hoping we can get into a little bit of a chat. I don't know how well it's going to work, but I wanted to imagine, or for you to imagine for a moment, that you are hired as the head of innovation, so you're VP of innovation at a company called McCain. Not all of you may know McCain. It's a Canadian-based company. I'm also based in Canada, so I certainly know McCain. But they are global, and they do actually make all of the French fries for McDonald's. I think globally, at least in North America, they make every single French fry for McDonald's. They're a massive company, very potato-y. So you can see here this entire line of like different French fries that they make, and they're basically frozen, and you put them in the oven, you bake them, and you get your French fries. So they have all these things that they call super fries. They have this entire line of Bistro Select. And then it's a little bit random, but they have these pizza pockets. And I didn't include it on the page, but they also have this line of frozen desserts, which is basically a cake that's in the freezer and you can take it out and eat it, obviously. So imagine that you're head of insights, or sorry, you're head of, I work in insights, so I say insights, you're head of innovation for McCain. How might you help them to innovate? What would you come up with? What would you suggest that they explore next? So feel free to drop it into the chat. I'm going to see if I can go to like full screen mode and actually see the chat. I'm not sure if that's going to work, because that would be good if I could actually see what you're saying. Can I? I don't think I can. So maybe Oh, here we go. Okay, anyone, any ideas?
We've got one who says jobs to be done. So I feel like we're hitting the lead right away.
Okay, but that's not that. So that's the way you might innovate. But I guess I was hoping for some actual ideas. So 𝐀𝐻N could launch X, 𝐀𝐻N could launch Y, 𝐀𝐻N could launch Z. Okay.
We've got frozen poutine bowls.
Sorry, frozen
poutine.
Okay. Okay, keeping it very Canadian. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Some mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Create a campaign for customers to choose some weird flavors. Okay. Waffles. I'll build off that waffle fries. They're not already there. Pancakes.
Oh, okay. Waffle fries. Oh yeah, they do.
That lattice cut in here. Yeah.
Cut. Yeah. They've got it a little.
Lots. Organic. Great ideas.
Okay. Awesome. So that was sort of an example of how 𝐀𝐻N could innovate. And what's happening there is you can see people, all of you, and it's not a criticism. This is the way that a lot of innovation happens. But a lot of people are riffing off what 𝐀𝐻N makes now. And that is actually one of the challenges when we think about innovation and its ability to move a company forward. A lot of the processes that we use to come up with new ideas actually start by looking backwards. So how do customers currently behave? What are we selling now? So a lot of us focused on potato things. Again, not a criticism. That's how a lot of innovation happens. What do we know how to make? And what are our competitors selling? So we're really looking at the current market, but it's almost a backwards look, right? Because when you look at the current market, you're not looking at what will people be doing next month, next week, next year. You're looking at what they did past month, past week, past year. And they're also not focused on the consumer. They're focused very much on our capabilities or our needs. We're a potato-y company, so we're going to continue to make potatoes in different formats. But that's not necessarily what consumers want. We don't yet know what they want. So now let's look at dinner through the lens of jobs to be done. I was actually hoping that this is a case where I could sort of have a person and live interview them. I don't think I'm going to try for that because I just think logistically it might be a little challenging. So I'm going to do myself. So this is an example of what we would call a qualitative interview. I don't know the extent to which any of you are familiar with consumer insights or market research. Big Insights is, as the name implies, an insights or a market research company. So we do a lot of qualitative interviews or more like one-on-ones or small groups. So you're going deep, you're talking to fewer people, and then quantitative research is when you're getting into percents and surveys and things like that. So one of the ways that we would understand jobs to be done is to start with a qualitative approach. So you talk to people one-on-one, and you would ask questions like this. So tell me a little bit about yourself. So I'm just going to tell you about myself. My name is Michael. I have two kids. They are 18 and 16, and one of them is living in the UK. She's going to school there, and the other one is with me part-time. I share custody with my ex-wife. So I'm going to talk to you about my most recent typical weeknight dinner. So my most recent typical weeknight dinner was last night, and my daughter and I made pizza. And so we bought the raw dough, bought the sauce and the toppings, and and we each made our own things. So I bought a few different things, some basil, some meats, some cheeses, and we sort of each created our own so that we could have each our own sort of taste and flavor profile that we wanted. What I was trying to accomplish, I was trying to create sort of a nice shared moment with her. We were watching a movie, so trying to connect with her, but then giving her that ability to express herself, because she could make the pizza the way that she wanted. I could make the pizza the way that I wanted. And how did I feel about it? I felt it was good. It was like a nice experience. It was a fair amount of work to do that because I'm old school. So I bought the real cheese and grated it. I don't buy any of the shortcut sort of products. So that's like the overview that you want to sort of understand the context of that consumer's weeknight dinner. What you would then do is you would go into the steps. So what were all the steps? So there was the rolling out the dough, there was the grating the cheese, there was the opening the package of meat, there was all these sorts of things to do. And you would list them out here sort of across the top. So there's like the planning, there's the preparing the ingredients. So it gets a little ugly as the font moves it all down. There was the actual making, the assembly, the baking, the eating. And then you would go in depth. So again, you imagine that you're doing this qualitative interview. So you're now interviewing one of your consumers one-on-one, and you talk to them about what exactly that involves. So preparing the ingredients, there was like grating cheese, there was rolling, all of these sorts of things. You talk to them about what you were hoping to achieve, like why did you do it that way? How did you know you were doing it right? How did twice. How did you feel while you're doing that? How did you want to feel? And how would an ideal situation be different? So probably easier. There'd be no grading, it would be pre-graded cheese. So this is the sorts of things that would lead to like the innovation of pre-graded cheese, is understanding the challenge that happens there. So what you would then do, so now you're like innovating for your company, is you would bring these things together. So you'd bring together, this is the picture of me as a person. So the bits that I told you, that first page, and then you would pick a step. So you might choose, for example, the step of building the pizza and customization. And then you'd say, okay, so building the pizza and customization, that's a step that I took specific to pizza. And 𝐀𝐭N is not a pizza company. They don't necessarily need to be a pizza company, but that's a specific thing that I wanted to do. And why did I want to do it? It's because it's about creativity, self-expression. It makes it more fun and engaging. So now thinking about that, so imagine that 𝐀𝐭N has that insight that I want to be able to customize, or I want my child to be able to customize. How might 𝐀𝐭N respond to that? So feel free to ideate on that.
Michael, there is also a question just about the previous slides. What about the jobs after the eating? I guess it's like about the cleaning process.
Yeah, absolutely. I just sort of stopped because I thought it would be boring if you just watched me typing. So yeah, you could totally take it all the way from like the very, very beginning to the very, very end. And then you as a company need to decide where you're going to help people, because you're not going to try to tackle all of these. And that's why on this page, I was saying, let's focus on this idea of customization. So you're picking a point, a step in that process, focusing in on that and saying, how might we innovate against that? You could absolutely say that we're going to focus on cleaning. So maybe it comes in a bag and the bag is oven proof. For example, you open it up and you bake it in the bag, you throw the bag away. That's a way in which 𝐀𝐭N, if they wanted to focus on that cleaning step, might be able to innovate. I can't see the chat. Any ideas based on how 𝐀𝐭N might help me to customize?
I'll throw one out there. So on the customization lens, you could, provide variable packaging that shows, different use cases or different ways of, seasoning the base product.
Yeah, absolutely. An idea that I had was actually Dig Insights as a company. We work with McDonald's. They're one of our clients, and they have shaker fries. I don't know if they have them in the US or Canada. I was recently at their conference and they're bringing foods from all around McDonald's around the world. And the idea behind it is you get your package of fries, like your little box of fries, and then you get an empty bag, and then you get flavor sachets. So there might be chili lime, there could be Cajun, there could be whatever it is, Parmesan, whatever it is. And then you dump the fries into the shaker bag, you dump in the flavorings that you want to put in, you can customize them, you can combine them, and then you shake it, and then you've created your own fry flavor profile. So that is absolutely something 𝐀𝐭N could do. It doesn't even need to have an empty bag. They could just give you little flavor sachets that you can sprinkle on top of your fries. So I don't know, were there any other interesting ideas in the chat that I can't see?
There's exactly what you were just saying, the extra seasoning packets. So I guess like with the fries.
Okay, awesome. So hopefully that gives you an idea around how starting to think about the consumer's life through the consumer's lens leads you in a different direction with innovation versus just thinking about life through your lens as a manufacturer or producer. So we're now going to get a little bit deeper into that. That was really just meant to be an introduction. Though the discussion that I just showed you, I'm going to come back to that later with a little bit more detail, because that is, if you go and get into jobs to be done, that is a discussion that you're going to want to facilitate. If you have the budget, we'll do it for you. Because assuming that you don't, you're going to want to facilitate that discussion directly with their users. It's not really that hard if you have a guide, and I do include a guide in this document. The other thing I'll mention, just because I mentioned the content in this document, is I'm fine to PDF this and send it out to everyone. So if you see stuff, any content in this, and you're like, typing or taking screenshots, please don't feel that you need to do that. We will send all the content to you.
we'll send the recording out, and Michael, if you want to include, if you want to just make sure that we have this deck afterward, I'll send that with the recording, just so everyone has it. Anyone who's registered for the webinar will get that after the fact.
Okay.
Probably
Awesome.
on Monday.
I'm making promises on Peter's behalf, like like I own startup CPG. I'm just like, this is what we're gonna do.
No, no, absolutely. That's absolutely happening.
Okay, awesome. So this is a quote from, you've probably heard this quote before. People don't want a 1/4 inch drill bit, they want a 1/4 inch hole. It's one of those quotes that gets thrown around. Theodore Levitt, I assume from the quality of his photos, probably passed on by now. I don't really know the details, but he's one of the sort of fathers of this kind of design thinking, jobs to be done, this sort of broader space. And the point here, of course, is that no one buys your product because they want your product, regardless of what it is. Say you make a spice mix or a sauce or a snack food. They don't want that. They want what it allows them to do. So they're buying your spice because it allows them to make their food taste better. They're buying their sauce because it allows them to transform a dry chicken breast into something delicious. They're buying your snack because it gives them energy or satiates them or makes them feel good, whatever it is. So it's the benefit that they're buying, it's not the product. If you could give people the ability to make a 1/4 inch hole through a way that's not a drill, that's a way of innovating. Maybe there's a different technique that allows them to do that. And that's where innovation happens, is by focusing on the whole as opposed to focusing on the drill bit. The jobs to be done. It's a way of seeing. It's a way of seeing the world through the eyes of your buyers, users, and consumers. So focusing on their objectives of why they're buying your stuff or your competitor stuff, as opposed to just focusing on yourself. So you see the challenges they're trying to solve and the jobs they're trying to do, and that creates a starting point for meaningful innovation. Okay, just to give you a sense of like jobs to be done informs a lot of what we do. So even in our day so far, these are some jobs that you might have tried to do or might have done. So maybe you had a coffee to get some energy, or maybe you had a coffee to get a moment of reflection. So as you can see from this example, it's not about the coffee, it's about the goal. And people can use the same product. So the same cup of coffee that I'm buying might be for me energy and might be for you that moment of reflection. And you can see how if you're a coffee company, if you're innovating and ideating around energy, that's going to give you a very specific set of ideas and a very clear focus. If you're alternatively focused on moment of reflection, that could give you also a very clear set of ideas. So there's not one right route, but rather it's this idea of focusing on the goal rather than the product. So for example, moment of reflection, if I'm a coffee company focused on that, decaf is an obvious one. That already exists. So how do you go beyond that? So I was just thinking this morning as I was sort of running through this deck prior to this, you know, that I've recently seen with like the keto and the high fat, high protein diet, people making like butter lattes and things like that. You could roast your coffee in butter. You could give it that flavor profile. And that's probably going to be a more of a relaxing moment coffee, I assume, rather than an energy coffee. I could be wrong, but at least it's pushing me in a different direction rather than just, you know, it's a different bag size or a different roast level of roast or something. It's pushing me in a different direction. Maybe you ate breakfast with someone to connect with others. You join the session probably because you're trying to get some inspiration for new ways of thinking about your business in general or new ways of thinking about innovation. So jobs to be done seeks to understand these objectives. The word objectives is intentional. So at its heart, jobs to be done is functional. Emotions and aspirations play a role, but the focus is on some functional objectives or jobs that people are trying to achieve. This sets jobs to be done apart from a lot of innovation frameworks. I've worked in a big, actually did I mention it? I don't think I did mention at the beginning. I used to work at Kraft Foods. So I've worked at big CPG. So I've been in these innovation brainstorming meetings. And a lot of the time, the conversation becomes very abstract. It's like, how do people want to feel? They want to feel, you know, inspired. And it becomes very abstract. It's always inspired, every category. That why they're eating breakfast here, they want to feel inspired. It becomes very abstract. So focusing on these more functional jobs keeps you much more grounded. That's also the criticism of jobs to be done. Some people don't like it because it is more functional than some other frameworks. And then of course, important to remember, the main goal of the job performer is not to interact with your brand or company. They're not buying you because they love you for the most part. They're buying you because they love what you allow them to achieve. That's the point. And that's how you get brand love, is by helping them to achieve something meaningful. So here's just another example for me personally. The job I have, because I work in insights, it's my job to understand perspectives from a diverse range of consumers. It's my job to understand consumer trends, to understand the discussion that's happening in the world around me. So there's lots of ways I could do that. I could read blogs or Twitter or online articles. I could watch documentaries, like horror of horrors. I could talk to people. One of the ways that I can do this most easily is for me, TikTok. And I think it's succeeded for a whole number of reasons. But I think a lot of the magic of it is the algorithm, because it feeds me content. It pushes stuff to me that I can then scroll through with a flick of a finger. So Twitter, online articles, documentaries, talk to people, all involve me to take an active role. So it requires me to search for something. So I need to go online and search for Johnny Depp, Amber Heard trial, whatever it might be. Not that I'm obsessed with their trial. Yeah, a little bit. But I need to do that. Whereas TikTok will figure out that I'm interested in that and just feed me that content. So it's addressing a need and also addressing a pain point. And we're going to talk a little bit about needs and pain points in a second, because once you've identified the job that you're addressing, then you understand their needs and their pain points, and you address it in a good way. Okay, so building a jobs to be done map for your business. A quote from Albert Einstein: if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. So this is our 55 minutes thinking about the problem, and then I'll leave it to you to figure out the solutions. So this is the job to be done structure that if you pursue jobs to be done, you will create this for your business. It does not need to look like this. You do not need to have this Venn diagram with the overlapping circles. This is the information that you need to have. So you'll need to have the job performance. So who are you targeting? So this is like classic CPG marketing. Who are you targeting? You're targeting busy moms. You're targeting women 25 to 34. You're targeting retired people. You're whatever it might be. So you figure out who your job performer is. And then you figure out what that job is. We're going to talk about each of these in a little bit more detail on the following pages. And then what's the process? The process is that thing that I went through at the very beginning, where I was talking about the steps that I took in making my dinner. And then you talk about the needs. So why did you do these steps in the process? What worked for you? What didn't work for you? Where are their pain points? And then you create the broader context. So nice ABC. So this is about the person. So the attitudes, who they are, who they want to be, their background, and their circumstances. Some of you, if you've worked at larger companies, would have experienced like a consumer segmentation. This is often where a consumer segmentation is. So you'll come in, maybe it's that you work in the chocolate category, and you'll have a segment of chocolate indulgers. They just, they indulge in chocolate. And then you'll have people who use chocolate as a reward. So it's a reward for something that they've achieved. Then you'll have another group of people who use chocolate to demonstrate love for others. So you'll have these sorts of segments. You won't necessarily, if you're a startup CPG company, have the money to create a full segmentation, but you can create segments other ways, through those one-on-one interviews that I talked about, through just thinking about the market. You can come up with some hypotheses on the segment, and then think about the segment that you most want to target. So as I mentioned, we're going to get a little bit more specific on each of these things. The job performer. So it's the person who's executing the job, might or might not be the buyer. So in the case of my making a homemade pizza example, if I had a partner who was out buying the food, you wouldn't necessarily focus on that. It's the person buying the cheese, buying the ingredients, all these sorts of things. You would focus on the person who actually makes it. In my case, it's the same person. So you don't always need to make that distinction. It's often pretty simple with consumer packaged goods. It's often the same person buying that's using it. So we don't need to over belabor that point. In B2B, it can be a lot more complex, because then you're getting into multiple decision makers and gatekeepers and influencers and stakeholders and all of these sorts of things. Usually within CPG, it's the same person. That's pretty easy. But even within that, don't just say my focus is people who buy my product. My focus is think at least of a demographic target. So is it more male, more female, more older, more younger, wealthier, poorer, like whatever it might be, something that gives you a little bit more specifics to focus on.
Michael, we have one question in the chat. So I guess with the example that you just gave, what if the parents are buying it for kids? I get sometimes parents don't buy exactly what kids eat.
Yes, I would focus on the user. So I'd focus on, and the moment of use might be the moment at which the parent gives it to the child, right? So say I buy, I don't know, say I buy Skittles. So I have this bag of Skittles in my bag. And I have this bag of Skittles because sometimes my kid gets cranky and I want to keep my kid happy. So the moment then is the moment that I pass the Skittles to the child. That's the job that I'm doing. I'm preventing my kid from getting cranky. The job is not the child eating the Skittles. The job is me as a parent giving them to the child. And why am I doing that? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. One of the things that I like about jobs to be done is that it is a very proscriptive thing. It's not abstract. As I mentioned earlier, where everything's about inspiration, jobs to be done is the opposite of that. So within each of these things, there's a very specific formula that you can follow. I love a good formula. It's way more likely that I'm going to come to the right place so I can follow some guidance. So when you write your job statement, it's a verb plus an object plus a clarifier. So examples: remove snow from pathways, visit family for special occasions, listen to music while exercising, grow my company's revenue. In the example that I gave of myself, it was prepare everyday weeknight dinner. So you can see a very clear sort of thing. We're going to spend a little bit of the time on this because this is jobs to be done. The job statement is very important. So ultimately the goal is you have your job that your company focuses on. You can print it and put it up on the wall, and it's sort of a North Star for you. So you want to make sure you get it right. So do's. So it should be purposeful and not an action. So for example, understand art is a job. Look at paintings is an action. So make sure that it is an action. There's got to be an end state. So grow financial portfolio is better than manage portfolio because managing can never end. So jobs to be done is done. So it's got to be a thing that you could say, I've done it, I've succeeded, I've failed, but it's done. So things like, be a better husband, be a better wife, be a better employee. These are not jobs to be done because in theory, this never ends. Reflect the job doer's perspective. So would they describe this as the thing they're trying to achieve? Use the verb plus object plus clarifier format. This is just the thing said above. Support is silent, help me to. So help me to clear snow from pathways. Help me to prepare an everyday weeknight dinner. Help me to, there's got to be a thing. And the help me to is where you come in as a company and as a brand. Might the job doer think the object is verb? So for example, the sidewalk is cleared from snow. The everyday weeknight dinner is prepared. I visited my family for special occasions. It's done. And use phrasing that would have been relevant 50 years ago. So don't get too trendy. And this truthfully is not too hard, the 50 years ago thing, as long as you remember what's on the next page, which is don't include a solution. So for example, you don't want to say, prepare an every weeknight dinner by getting inspired by YouTube videos, right? Because that's something that wouldn't have been relevant 50 years ago and might not be relevant in the future, but you're also now going outside of that statement and getting into a solution, which is one of the don'ts. Don't include a solution because this will constrain your innovation. So, don't clear snow from pathways using shovel. Maybe there's a completely different way to do it. Don't include needs in the job. Needs are super important. So that's where you're going to get into pain points. That's where you're going to get into opportunities to disrupt the market. You definitely want it, but you don't want the needs. So quickly clear snow from pathways. Quickly is a need. Effortlessly. All of these sorts of things. That you have in that map, but just back up a few pages. That goes here under the needs, a little green, dark, almost looks black probably, the box of needs. So it's still recorded, it's just not part of the job statement.
Michael, sorry, there's just like one question about, can you add any situation to the job statement? For example, I'm attending an art show, I want to understand art so that I can feel more something. Or like a role, like as a parent, I want like, as I'm attending an art show, I want to something.
I think you want to keep the statement quite clean. So you would include all of those things maybe under, for example, circumstances. So that's where number 3 here, I don't know if you can follow my mouse or if it shows up or not, but I'm mousing over number 3 here on the right under the context. So the circumstances would be, I'm a parent, I'm at an art show, all of this sort of stuff, but focus on that job statement and keep it quite clean. So all of this information gets captured, but it gets captured in a very specific way.
Okay.
And then don't confuse observation for jobs. Like, most parents want their children to succeed in life. That's not a job. That's simply an observation. Doesn't include compound concepts like clear snow from pathway and ensure icy overhangs are cleared, whatever it might be. It's got to be a single thing. And then don't confuse jobs for needs. Again, needs are recorded, but they're recorded in that needs section. So a street food vendor wants to sell more food. Attracting hungry people is a need. That's how you get to that job. But selling more food is the job. Okay, here's where I thought we'd be able to chat live, but it didn't work out. Okay, so imagine that you're chatting live. Imagine you're talking. So we're going to talk about like what's wrong with each of these. So here's an incorrect statement. Search by keyword for documents in the database. So what's wrong with it? I'll just give you the answer. So it includes a specific method, search by keyword, that might or might not be relevant in the future, and the current technology, the database. So something like this encourages incremental thinking and little real innovation because you're locking yourself into keywords and databases. Really, the job is to retrieve content. And then what are the new ways in which you could help them to do that? People prefer to attend meetups and events that are nearby. The issue is that it's an observation. There's no job there. It's true, but it's not going to help you in any way because it's just an observation. There's no job around which to build innovation, potentially leading to ideas that don't address needs. Attend an event is the need, or the job rather, sorry. Find the cheapest airfares quickly. So what are the issues? The issues are there's two things that shouldn't be there. Cheapest, that's a need, and quickly, that's also a need. These are important, but they inform the job. They are not the job. If you include them in the job, it may overly limit your focus. So the job is to find airfares. You'll still record cheap, you'll still record quickly, but you'll record that as needs. Help me to plan a vacation the whole family will enjoy. What are the issues? Enjoyed is a need that should be noted separately. And then this is like jobs to be done gets very picky, but help me, you can just remove that, just say plan a vacation or plan a family vacation. Jobs to be done is not for like laid back people, it's for like those A types who like to have everything be like perfectly lined up. So this is also a really key one. Decide at what level of job you want to focus, because for most of us, there are multiple levels. So here's just an example. A micro job could be laying a brick. So you talk to someone who's laying bricks, you say, what are you doing? I'm laying a brick. That is a job. Someone else doing that exact same job could say, I'm building a wall. Someone else doing that exact same job could say, I'm creating a cathedral. Someone else doing that exact same job could say, I'm creating opportunities for people to connect. There's no one right or wrong answer. You have to decide what's the level of job at which you want to focus. I would say try to not go too high. You don't want to get into the creating opportunities for people to connect, because just knowing that you're all in CPG, most CPG can address that need, right? We connect over food. You don't want to go that high because it starts to become generic and unhelpful. But you also don't necessarily need to be so specific as laying a brick. So decide what's the right way to go. And there's a good technique for this. Like as you're doing those one-on-one interviews that I talked to you about at the beginning, you can ask why to move up the ladder. So I could say, well, I was preparing this dinner together with my daughter. You could say why, and I'd say, well, because I wanted to have this shared experience with her. You could say how, and I could say, well, I was rolling out the pizza dough. I was grating the cheese. I was, cutting the meat, whatever it might be. So you can go why to get more conceptual and how to get more functional. And then as you're doing that, you'll have to decide where you want your brand and your focus to be.
Michael, we have just one more question. Are you making job statements and then outcome statements separately? Maybe you could give like how are they different? And then maybe like, do you need to do them separately?
I'm not quite sure I understand what outcome statements is. There isn't specifically outcome statements within jobs to be done. I don't know if the person who wrote that wants to clarify.
Maybe Stephen, if you could send just message.
Okay, we can come back to it, but Yeah, I'm sure we can figure it out if the person.
Sorry, he just said how to include the outcome in the job statement.
Okay. So the job statements, remove snow from pathways. The outcome, of course, is that it would be removed. Visit family for special occasions. The outcome is that the visit would have occurred. So I think it's there within the statement. You just don't specifically say what happens. If you're talking about like how I want to feel, the sort of the needs that have been met, that would be here. So for example, listen to music while exercising. One of my needs might be to feel energized. One of my needs might be to insulate myself from the social atmosphere at the gym because I want to feel like I'm in my own space. So that would be, maybe that's what you're talking about with the outcomes. So that would be more connected or captured here with the needs. If I haven't answered, feel free to follow up. So here's an example of a process. So this is what I was hoping to sort of do live with someone that I sort of did it by myself, talking about the preparing an everyday weeknight dinner. So this is just an example of the process that someone might go through with today's event. So there's planning, there's a step in there of discovering the event, there's selecting, so there's determining which event fits needs. I'm sure all of you get multiple emails every day. Things are happening. You have to decide what you're going to do, what you're not going to do. So there's preparing. If you have a partner or more people involved in your business, you have to determine who's going to attend, arrange for other responsibilities, childcare, whatever it might be. Participate, record it and take notes, then strategize, consider the applicability to my business, maybe connect with others at this event, and then finally communicate, so socialize the learning within my business. And you can imagine if we were an events company, and Peter, I know you're not an events company, but it's startup CPG, you could innovate with any of these things. So for example, like with strategize, consider applicability to my business. So if we were innovating for startup CPG, we could be sending follow-up emails that talk about how this is applicable. We could be offering seminars, follow-up seminars. We could be offering coach courses. We could be offering a ton of different products and services that would address that. Same thing with socializing within my business. Maybe it's an offer of a follow-up presentation, or it's a PowerPoint deck that you could present. There's so many things that we could do, but we would focus on one of these steps and then use that as a springboard for innovation. Okay. And now finally the needs. So think of the job as a target. So removing snow from pathways is the target, and the needs are the measure of success. So did I do it quickly and easily and effectively, and all of these sorts of things. Again, jobs to be done loves a very prescriptive approach. So there's a direction of change, a unit of measure, an object, and a clarifier. So things like minimize, maximize, a unit of measure, time, money, an object, and then a clarifier. So minimize the time that I spend shoveling snow. Could be a need in my, I don't know why shoveling snow has become a thing. Maybe I'm Canadian. Minimize the time that I spend cooking. Minimize the number of pots and pans that I use while cooking my dinner. Maximize the time that I get to spend socializing with others while cooking, for example. Could all be needs that would inform my everyday weeknight dinner. So with using the example of this event, minimize the time that I spend summarizing learning to share with colleagues. Minimize the risk that's created if I explain jobs to be done incorrectly. Increase the likelihood that my team and my company understands what jobs to be done is. So again, you could imagine if you were running startup CPG, and Peter, I'm not trying to pick on you, how you could use these objectives as ways to innovate.
Yeah, please pick on me.
Okay.
I'm a prop for you this session. Go for it.
Okay, there you go. You're my live person. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of jobs to be done, what you're looking for, how you structure it. Again, knowing that I love a good structure. So how do you uncover jobs to be done? So I always start each section with a quote. If I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. I always find this quote very frustrating because people who don't believe, I work in market research, consumer insights, always say, well, this just proves that, consumer insights is useless because people would have just said faster horses. But if you actually think of it more metaphorically, that is what Henry Ford delivered. He delivered a faster horse. It just isn't a horse, but that is still what he did. So people were right. They can express what they need. You just then need to look at that in a non-literal way and say they're expressing a need. How do I address that need? So I always sort of try to flip this quote around. So this, I think, if you do decide to pursue jobs to be done, will be a very useful page for you. So this is, I mentioned at the beginning that there's two types, broadly speaking, two types of research, qualitative and quantitative, with qualitative being discussions, depth discussions with a smaller group of people. The idea here, excuse me, is that they will be one-on-one. So you will sit down with someone and you will talk to them about their experience using your brand, your category in general. So you can go through this discussion. So you like build some rapport. By the way, if you find this fascinating, there is an entire career. We have probably 15 people at Dig who do nothing but this kind of research. So if you find this fascinating, yeah, it is a thing. So you build a rapport, then you understand the main job. So when you do the job, what you're trying to accomplish, what tasks are involved, you build that process map together with the person. You can literally just lie it down on paper. And then you would sort of spend an hour or two talking them through this. So how do you make decisions along the way? How do you feel at each stage? How do you want to feel? So here you're starting to get at pain points. With the here you're starting to get at needs. With the how do you feel? Getting at pain points. How do you know you're doing the job right? How do you end each stage of the job and move to the next? You talk to them about their functional goals, their emotional goals, what parts of the process are most enjoyable, their current solutions, how an ideal solution would be different. Again, knowing that just like with the faster horses, don't expect them to literally invent your next product. Expect them to articulate their needs, and then you come up with the product in an interesting way. Are there circumstances you react differently? What conditions influence you? Some tips to use throughout. Ask why to go up a level of abstraction. So again, why was I making this dinner? Because I wanted to connect with my daughter. The why takes you up into this more abstract level. And then how, while I was rolling out pizza dough, I was cutting meat, I was grating cheese. Recall a specific circumstance. This is really important. People often get very abstract. So they'll talk about dinner in general. Talk to them about their last dinner. Because if you talk to me about dinner in general, you mightn't have got this need that I expressed specific to the pizza around like customizing it, like allowing my daughter to sort of build her pizza and me to build my pizza. So having this shared but still independent experience, you might not get that if you just talked about dinner in general. You also don't want people to talk about others. People always do this. Like I've done tons of these interviews and people will say, well, people in general, they blah, blah, blah. No, it's you, it's your last dinner, and get them to really focus on themselves. And that's, oh, there you go. I didn't even realize that was not the last point there. It's been a few days since I wrote this. Okay. So, and this is a table that you will create for every interview. You generally do it after, like I would encourage you, if the participant allows it, to record the interview, and then you go back and you watch it and you make these notes. You write down the job steps, you make your observations, talk about the emotional and social aspects, talk about their needs, their circumstances, and finally add some comments. And you'll see if you start to do 5 or 10 of these, you'll see things emerge that are common. And what the goal is to identify those patterns. So you don't want the one-off things. You want the things that maybe they're expressing it differently, but everyone, not necessarily everyone, but many people are expressing it, and you're seeing this consistent pattern. That's what you're trying to find with any qualitative. Even with quantitative, you're trying to find patterns. Okay, so now that's qualitative research. The other is quant. And I don't want you to think that this is the only kind of quant research. Like I mentioned at the beginning, segmentation. So segmentation could be very useful as you're trying to create that context. User profiling could be really interesting as you're trying to create that who bucket. But one of the things that's most useful is actually to do quant research on the needs, because you can generate a long list of needs. And then it's just 2 questions. It's really simple. So we actually did, I mentioned that Dig Insights, we created Upside. Upside is an innovation insight platform. So I actually did some research on the Upside platform for this session. And so Lenara helped me. I came up with some ideas. I actually reached out to a startup CPG company that we're working with and asked them to provide some needs. But what we did is we brainstormed some needs. And then we did this survey with 2 questions. So think of what's important to you when you're preparing a typical weeknight dinner at home for yourself or others. How important is this to you? And then we showed them the needs one at a time, and they ranked them as very important, somewhat important, not very, or not at all. And then still thinking that when you're preparing a typical weeknight dinner at home for yourself or others, how satisfied are you with your ability to do each of these? So very satisfied to not at all satisfied. And then I added a not applicable to me. So for example, something might be like, identifying foods that my kids would like to eat. I wanted to have a not applicable just in case I don't have kids. I don't want to say I'm unsatisfied. Like I can't really even answer the question if you don't have that not applicable. So we added that in there. And actually a special shout out to Lenara, who's given up her Saturday morning to be on this call, but B, she actually programmed this because I didn't. I just I sent her all the statements and she programmed it for me. Thank you, Lenara. Okay, so here's the needs that I came up with. And you'll notice if you're really paying attention, and I'm not saying anyone is, but you'll notice that I didn't do this perfectly. So you're always supposed to start with a direction: increase, decrease, minimize, maximize, whatever it might be. And I did that for a lot of them, but not for all of them. So you see, for example, maximize use of local ingredients, products, and brands in my meal preparation. Minimize the number of dishes, pots to clean after the meal. Minimize the time that I spend cooking. Reduce the cost, reduce how much protein, reduce how much processed food I'm eating. I did it for some of them, but I didn't do it perfectly. So express my creativity as I cook. I wanted to have that in there, but I didn't say like maximize my creativity. I couldn't think of a really way to do that. So I bent the rules a little bit, which is okay to do. But I would say as much as possible, try to have this unit of direction, because that's where you're going to help people, right? If it's just express my creativity, it can be a little harder for you to say, how are we then going to address it? Or if it's maximize the number of local ingredients I'm using, that's easier to then address. So this is actual research. We really, really did this. So feel free to take these things. I'm not saying this is perfect. This is a list that I came up with. I do not own a CPG company, so I'm a little further from the space than all of you are. And this is also very specific about the idea of like everyday weeknight meal. But this is a percent saying that each need is very important. So make a great tasting meal, 68, make a meal that keeps me full, 55, prepare a meal with ingredients I have on hand, blah, 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 all the way down to reduce how much protein I'm eating. Most people are not trying to eat less protein. I included that because I had something around increase how much protein I'm eating. And I thought, if people are trying to increase, maybe someone's trying to decrease. Not very many people. But anyways, I put that in there for balance. I also thought it was interesting, like stay on my diet relatively low, make a meal that has lots of color variety relatively low, involve my family in preparing the meal that was inspired by my pizza comes in relatively low. So it's not something that's common in every meal. And then I also thought this was interesting, increase the range of cuisines that I can prepare at home, like European cuisines, Asian cuisines, African cuisines. Most people don't seem to want, maybe they want new recipes, but they're not necessarily looking to try to learn how to create a new cuisine. Okay.
Michael, sorry, could you just go back to that slide? There was just a question about when it comes to food and taste, what do you find is measurable to assess flavor, texture, mouthfeel, digestion, or like how it feels after eating? But I do remember that we had some ideas about like, I want to create like a variety of textures in my meals.
Yep. Yes, so we did have that. So we have here on the left, flavor variety. I'm not sure where texture ended up, but we did try to have those things. We didn't have anything around digestion or mouthfeel. You can ask anything. You just have to express it in a way that the consumer can understand. So I think that's the challenge that I've experienced in research, is often we get so close to things that we sort of forget how normal people talk. I did one time, this is a bad example. Well, I think it's a funny example. I once had a beverage company test the idea of superior throat glide, because that's how they described it. It's probably not how most people describe it. So just be conscious of that. But yes, you can for sure. You can test any needs that are within that framework. Just make sure that they relate to that job to be done. So for example, this was about prepare that everyday weeknight meal. So digestion might not necessarily fall into that, because that's not about preparing that weeknight meal, right? Okay, so then again, jobs to be done very proscriptive. So there's the math that jobs to be done uses to figure out what are the most important needs. So it's the percent saying that it's very important. So literally these percentages, the 68, the 55, multiply by 2. So you put a double weight on importance, and then you subtract the percent that say they're very satisfied with their ability to achieve that need now. And that gives you a ranked list. So here's the ranked list. This was just the raw percent saying that everything that's very important. This is now the ranked list. It actually follows the two lists rank in roughly the same order. And I think what it reflects is that preparing a typical weeknight meal is a need that people have very often. They've put a lot of focus on addressing the common needs that they have. So I didn't uncover a lot of like secret or hidden needs here, which again, just reflects the fact that it is a pretty mainstream sort of need state or job to be done rather. So looking at this list, what I did is I looked just at this list on the left. There's 9 things here. And I thought what there actually are is there's sort of 3 themes. So this is just literally the stuff on the left, the 9 here on the left, and I grouped them into 3 themes. So make a great tasting meal, make a meal that has lots of flavor variety. Again, you can criticize me because I didn't use that increase the great taste of my meal. Like I couldn't think of a way to express it nicely. Then under efficient, make a meal that keeps me full, prepare a meal with the ingredients I have on hand, reduce the cost of the meal. And then this was a judgment call on my part. Reduce the number of meals that I order from restaurants. So here's where real research with people would help you. Because is that about maybe tasty? Like maybe it's like I want to make my meals taste better so that I reduce the number of meals that I order from restaurants. You'd want to understand why. You'd want to dig into that. Is it because meals from restaurants are not healthy? So in fact, that belongs in the healthy group. I don't know. I made the judgment call that it's primarily about saving money, but I don't know if that's true. But again, we're just working with an example here. And then under healthy, make a meal that's healthy, reduce how much processed food I'm eating, and increase how much vegetables I'm eating. So those are the 3 sort of needs that people identified within this prepare an everyday weeknight meal option. And so here, what I wanted to do is now go back to 𝐀𝐭n, go back to our 𝐀𝐭n example, and say, all right, so we're this potato-y company. How might we innovate against these needs within the context of everyday weeknight meal? So I came up with, and these are theorized. Again, this is where you would do more research to actually build it out. So I came up with some context. So their attitudes. So this person, so now I'm focused on this efficient. So the needs here is to make a meal. So make a meal that keeps me full, prepare a meal with ingredients I have on hand, reduce the cost of the meal, reduce the number of meals that I order from restaurants. So I came up with some theories on the attitudes, background, and the circumstances for these people. This may or may not be right. This is where research will help you. I say that as a person that does research. So attitudes. So these people are concerned about their ability to give their children food that they like, that will help them feel full and to feel good. Their background, they're challenged by inflation to stretch their income. They need creative solutions to feed their family. Their circumstance, minimal time and energy for cooking. The job performer is a busy parent. The job is to prepare everyday weeknight dinner. And their process is home cooking, but using shortcut products. So how might 𝐀𝐭n innovate to help this person? So feel free to put stuff in the chat, but things that occurred to me is like, I don't know if everyone's familiar with Hamburger Helper, but it's this idea of like, you add the meat and it's all the stuff that helps to sort of bulk out that meat. So that occurred to me as something that 𝐀𝐭n could do. They could make these like sort of home fry type products that you then add some ground beef to it and it bulks out that meal. So bulking out the meal is like sort of a theme that 𝐀𝐭n could explore as a potato company, because it is the side dish. Of course, you're adding it. It can give you a little bit of filling, and then you add the meat and you add vegetables to make it a little healthier. Any other, I don't know if anyone's using the chat. Any other ideas on how 𝐀𝐭n might address this need for like efficient, helping people save money, dealing with inflation? Feel free to shout them out. Lennar, if there's any.
Yep, we have some examples that they could add hamburgers and buns in the bag and add to fries. Another one is partnership with the partnership in reusable meal planning, sizing, storage, freshness, glass containers, oxy pumps.
Okay, awesome. So hopefully this gives you a sense of how focusing on this job to be done, focusing on these needs, pushes you into more interesting directions than just starting with, oh, we're a potato-y company. Because that doesn't give you a lot to work with, but focusing on these consumer needs is going to push you in new directions as a potato-y company. Okay, and if we were going to do it live, we could talk about 𝐿 might make more tasty solutions, 𝐿 might make more healthy solutions. The idea that I thought was healthy is why does everything have to be potato based? Like people are trying to increase how much vegetables they're eating. Potatoes are technically a vegetable, but I don't think most people think of them that way. I think they think they're like a starch or something. You know, could they make cauliflower fries or carrot fries or beet fries or any of these other sorts of things that would make it healthier and potentially also tastier? And that's the thing, when you come up with an innovation, so I come up with my beet fries, I think they're healthier. Someone else might think they're tastier. That's fine. The point is that focusing on health helps me to come up with something new. Okay, and then additional reading here. So these are the books that I read as I was sort of learning about jobs to be done. And I don't, by the way, consider myself an expert. I'm not Clayton Christensen, this guy here on the left. Clayton Christensen is the guy who like really came up with jobs to be done. But the Innovator's Dilemma is a book he wrote, and then the other two are also highly recommended. My favorite actually of the three is the one in the middle, the Jobs to be Done playbook, because it is very just useful in terms of like saying, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then when you ask the questions, you ask them like this. And as I mentioned a few times, I love a good guideline that I can follow so I know I'm doing it right. I'm just going to quickly show you, thanks. I'm just going to quickly show you if anyone's interested to see the Upside platform, because if you do want to innovate and you do want to come up with some jobs to be done, we've developed this platform, and we use jobs to be done as we came up with this platform. The job that we're focused on is develop new ideas. That's really it. And then the needs were do it efficient, do it quickly, do it cost effectively, make it inspiring, a whole bunch of other things. So I'm going to show you our platform. Again, not trying to sell you, because I'm offering to some of you. If you're interested, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is on the first page. We do partner with companies sometimes to do case studies, and we're specifically interested in doing some jobs to be done case studies. Lenara is one of our content writers, so she would be working with you to come up with, you know, what's your story, how did we work with you, what did you learn, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just going to quickly show you sort of how I use the Upside platform as I develop this presentation. So first of all, I'm going to go to create. So this is the bit that Lenara helped me set up. So she programmed, it's pretty easy to work with. She programmed a study. This is how it looked to respondents. It's all mobile first. You can do it also on a computer, but it's all mobile first. So respondents would have received a link. They would have clicked on this link, and then it would have launched the survey.
Sorry, Michael, we cannot see.
Oh, you can. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Stop share. I'm going to have to go in and reshare my screen. Sorry, because I was sharing just that tab. Thank you, Lenara. I'm now going to share my full screen, which is a little scary.
While he pulls that up, I just want to mention too, if there is a great case study that comes out of this, you know, for the folks that are here today, we have opportunities to potentially even broadcast that more widely with the blog that we have through 𝗧𝗵PH, or potentially even one of the future magazine articles could feature the partnership. So that's a very generous offer on the Digs on Digs side. It would be great to see a brand take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for further context, there's a lot of big CPG companies. I don't know if I'm allowed to say names, but there's a lot of big CPG companies using this platform to innovate. Okay, so this is what people saw. So I'll just, when Lenara had programmed the survey, so they received an email. Basically, they're people who signed up to be on panels saying that they're willing to do surveys. They get rewarded for doing it. So they would have received a link, they would have clicked on it, they were screened to make sure they actually do cook. So I eliminated anyone who doesn't cook, which is not that many people. And then it was the importance question. So how important is this to you when you're cooking a typical weeknight dinner? Make it easier to control my weight. I'll say not very much, probably is actually very important. Maximize the use of local ingredients, products, and brands. I'll say somewhat important. Make a meal that's fun to eat, very important, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see it's a little bit repetitive. It's not that much fun, but the person can get through it pretty quickly. After they answered all these important things, we then showed them, just to create a break, because I didn't want people to think it was one big question. Just to create a break, we asked them about how they felt about it. So we have this emoji question, and people answer using these emojis. And actually, the emojis, if I go into the report, I thought this was interesting. The emojis that people felt about cooking a typical weeknight dinner were actually really positive. So optimistic, love, hope, anticipation, trust, proud, amazed, joy. It's only further down that you get into some negatives, like annoyed, disapproval, cynicism. And a lot of these negatives, sad, fear, anxious, like really are at the bottom. So overall, people feel actually really positive about cooking a typical weeknight dinner. I was a bit surprised about that. But primarily, I included that question just to create a break between the importance question up here and then the satisfaction question down here. So after they answered importance for everything, they had this emotion question, and then they said, well, how satisfied are you with your ability to do this now? So minimize the time that I spent cooking, make a great tasting meal. You can actually rank them just like this. So this is very satisfied. So make a great tasting meal, 50%, that's the highest. Make a meal that keeps me full, 48%, are satisfied with their ability to do that now. So even with make a great tasting meal, only 50% are very satisfied. So you can see there's still half the population is not very satisfied with their ability to make a great tasting meal. There's still an opportunity to help people on that. So that is a really simple, like just way of using this platform to rank the needs and to identify opportunities to come up with ideas. Once you do come up with ideas, this is where 𝗂𝐵PHI was really invented for, is to actually screen and test those ideas. So I'm going to show you again the user interface here. So this is actually something that we did about 3 years ago, maybe. Cannabis is legal in Canada, so there's lots of cannabis products in the US, truthfully too. It's a little bit of a gray area, but lots of cannabis products. So we did an internal brainstorming and we came up with a whole bunch of cannabis products. We did not focus on a specific job to be done. So they're very broad. The team came up with these ideas. It was truthfully just a little bit of fun because we wanted to be able to show our idea screening interface without showing obviously any client ideas, because they would freak out if we did. So we have this sort of swiping interface that was honestly originally inspired by Tinder. So as we innovated, as we did our jobs to be done work to come up with 𝗂𝐵PHI, that was one of the needs that we wanted. One of the pain points is that we didn't want it to feel like a typical survey. They wanted it to feel sort of fun. So you see your THC chewing gum as a consumer, I can be like, not for me. So I'll say no. 420 so this is like a soda stream for cannabis. Some of them are a little quirky. This is wine and cannabis. I could be like, yeah, all right, I would do that. 𝐲𝑇hyme massage oil. Yeah, I would do that. So then which do I prefer? Which would I rather have? Would I rather have 𝐲𝑇hyme massage oil or Mari wine? Because I liked both of them. So which of those two do I prefer? I'm going to say the wine. Now there's a 𝗂𝐻𝐿. We got very creative with our names. Everything is like a high or a pot sort of play on. Hopefully no one's offended. So I could say Mari wine or 𝗂𝐻𝐿. I'll go 𝗂𝐻𝐿. So you can see people, basically, I don't want to take you through the whole thing, but people were able to sort of run through all of the ideas using this platform. And then what you get is you get this ranking. So it's ranked on the idea score, and the idea score is a combination of interest and commitment. It's not a straight average, it is a weighted score. And we put a lot of work into sort of figuring out what that weighting should be. The very best idea is this thing called Pain Busters, which is actually probably the least controversial of them. It's a non-addictive CBD pill to manage your chronic aches and pains. So it's actually one that's not about getting high at all, which I thought was sort of interesting. But then right after that, you have baked cookie dough, which is about getting high. So that's one of the ways that you can just rank these ideas. So the worst idea all the way at the very bottom is hemp yarn. And then cannabis condoms was one up from that. So that's the easy way to just rank things. You're then able to look at subgroups. So for example, I might say that, goodness, I'm going to play around with this. So let's say, what do younger people like? And this will now re-rank. Takes a second to run. The lighter bar here is the total sample, and then the darker bar is that subgroup of consumers. So in this case, younger consumers. So the massage oil was more appealing to those younger consumers. Amsterdam Energy Bites. You can see a lot of things are actually more appealing to those younger consumers. They're maybe a little bit more into the category than older consumers. I don't see anything, just Pain Busters is the only thing that's stronger amongst those the older consumers. So for example, I could say the 𝐲𝑇hyme massage oil. That's something that interests me, so I'll highlight it. And then I'll say, okay, what about if I make it women? Does it get, oh, wow, okay, it actually did really well. So women, it now is their number 2 idea, the 𝐲𝑇hyme massage oil. If I were to reverse that and say, okay, men, the 𝐲𝑇hyme massage oil falls like pretty far down the list. So there's clearly an opportunity for men to be more massage aware, because women probably like massages. So that's a way that you can look at those subgroups. Then we get into some cool visualization. Like those are the ones that are pretty like intuitive, like anyone that's seen research has seen subgroup analysis. We also did some sort of creative stuff because one of the needs that we identified as we worked through the Upside platform was this need for inspiration. So rather than just like a straight ranking gives you clarity, but it's not very inspiring. The clients wanted to also be inspired. So we had some cool visualizations, and I'll show you the coolest one next. But this is now looking at that interest and commitment. So interest is the swipe right. And then commitment is the percent who chose it. Because remember, I liked the Mari wine and the popsicle, and it's now one versus the other. So this is the percent that chose something in that subsequent trade-off. So what's interesting often is you get things down here in what we call the niche quadrant. So things that not everyone likes, but those that like them tend to pick them in that subsequent trade-off. So there's some passionate support for them. So you'll often identify like some sort of hidden gems or opportunities down here. So these are things like cannabis coffee. What's down here? Beyond Weed, which is like Beyond Burger, but maybe with pot. So some things like this. Mari wine is a little bit on that edge too. So often when you're innovating, one of the nice things you can do with this platform is you can test your ideas versus in-market products. So say you're making up a new chewing gum, you can test it versus Trident and Five and Big Red and all of the other in-market chewing gums. Your idea is not going to end up in the top right. It just isn't. You're a small brand just starting out. No one's heard of you. But you don't want to then say all of your ideas are horrible. What you want is to find stuff down here where not everyone wants it, but those who want it really see something there. And that's your opportunities for innovation. On the other hand, here's the sort of danger zone. So these are ideas that a lot of people like, the popsicle, the 𝐀𝐻 oil, the cannabis bar. A lot of people liked these, but they tended not to choose them in that subsequent trade-off. So there's something about them, once they dig a little bit deeper, they pick something else. And if you think about being in a retail world, you're in a grocery store, for example, that's deadly because people like your product, but they tend to pick something else that they like. That's where you really don't want to be. It's actually much better to be down here with some really strong commitment. Then the last thing I'll show you, this is now the platform getting more conceptual. This is again with addressing that need of clients wanting to be inspired. So this is a visualization of the relationships between all of the tested ideas. And so what it's saying, for example, is that someone who likes Heavenly Hemp Aromatherapy Bubble Bath is also very likely to like a 𝐂𝐻𝐵 face mask, and very likely to like organic hemp clothing, hemp yarn, CBD mani-pedi kits. So there's a territory here of like sort of beauty, fashion, there's skin cream, there's oil, there's massage oil. So there's a segment here of beauty and fashion ideas. Over here, there's a segment of like sort of desserty type ideas. So gummy bears, popsicle, cookie dough, squirts, which is candy, chocolate. So there's a segment here of sort of candy or indulgent things. There's a segment here of cannabis tea, energy bites, chewing gum. So these are again foods, Mari wine, cannabis coffee. So they're again foods, but now they're less indulgent. So you're going from fashion and beauty to less indulgent food to indulgent food. And then down here, what's this stuff? Pancake mix, dry rub. So these are now more savory things, baking oil, spring rolls, seasoning mix. Now you're getting your savory foods, your main course with cannabis. Here's your dessert with cannabis, here's your main course with cannabis. So the benefit here is that if you test a whole bunch of ideas, and they're all your ideas, you can understand how they sort of structure and segment. So you'd never want a brand to offer all of these things. It would just be chaotic. So you could have a brand that offers a few of these things. You could have a brand that offers a few of these things. It's going to give you focus and coherence if you focus on one sort of segment of the map. If you test your idea versus in-market stuff, then you can see, okay, what competitors are you sitting next to? What territory do you play in? So it can help you to make some strategic decisions around where should we sit physically in the store? Who's our greatest threat? You know, all of these sorts of things. Just sort of cool. I think that is essentially what I wanted to show you about this platform. Again, I'm always very conscious of like not wanting to be too salesy. So I'm not trying to sell any of you on using it, but rather did just want to show you that this exists as an opportunity If you do want to check it out, it's upside.com. With upside with 2 I's, by the way. I don't know what upside.com with 1 I. I don't know where that takes you. probably nowhere bad, but not too where we want you to be. And as I mentioned a few times, if you do want to use this platform, if you do want to work with us on the jobs to be done process, we are looking for case study partners, so that option is there. And that is it. I think I know it was much less than the 3 hours, and I apologize, Peter.
No, I'm sure folks are grateful on a weekend to get a little time back. I do have 1 or 2 questions. I'm just kind of curious. In designing these programs, is there kind of a rule of thumb on what the right minimum amount of participants is to kind of get a representative sample, and the way that how do you go about pre-qualifying them? I think there was a question earlier that kind of hinted at this, but how do you pre-qualify them without already determining too early what the problem statement is by doing that, right?
Yeah, good point. So I think it's a different answer certainly for qualitative and quantitative. So when you're doing those one-on-one interviews, and I do really, that's a really important thing to do. A lot of people don't like doing it. It's a bit awkward. Ideally, you're talking to people you don't know. So knowing that you're in the startup world, you probably don't want to pay to recruit pure strangers, but hopefully you can get friends of friends of friends. So they're not people you know well, and they're hopefully people who use your category. And there you're hoping for 5 at the absolute minimum, 20 at the absolute maximum, because each interview will be like an hour or 2 hours. And you probably don't want to put 40 hours into it. And you'll also start to see patterns pretty quickly, because people are more similar than they are dissimilar. You will see absolutely outliers, but you'll also see a lot of patterns starting to form. And that's why I gave you that grid of how you record your observations from the interview. As you compare across grids from different interviews, you'll see patterns very quickly start to form. And even when we do this professionally for clients, like a big CPG company, they won't do more than 20 of these. They'll probably do 10 to 15, assuming there is one target. Sometimes, in Canada, they'll do 10 in English Canada, 10 in Quebec, something like that. Or they'll do, a few with women, a few with men. Then you might need to increase your sample, but assuming you have a coherent sample where you're just defining it as users of the category, then you should be fine. And actually, I mentioned users of the category. That's an important thing. You don't necessarily want to focus it just on users of your brand, because they might have developed specific behaviors because they use your brand. What you want to do is talk to non-users to understand what are they doing, and your brand can play a role. The other thing I'll quickly mention on that point is that innovation and jobs to be done is not just about new products. Even we fell into that, and I sort of directed you into that direction as we talked about the McCain example. But innovation could be messaging innovation, it could be packaging innovation, it could be claims innovation. So you might have a product and you talk to people and you can understand that maybe it's just the way that I'm explaining it, or the way that I've labeled it, or the way that I've depicted it on the package is not working. And that in itself can be a form of innovation. That was a bit tangential to your question, but I think it's
helpful.
Point to make.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, the other thing. So with the quant research, that was a question answered. With the quant research, we don't like to analyze samples of less than 75. Once you get 75 and above, you get, people always say, oh, is it statistically significant? That's not really a real question. Because basically what happens is the margin of error increases or decreases. There's no point at which a number becomes statistically significant. It's always statistically significant plus or minus 10%, 5%, 2%. And as you increase that sample size, the margin of error, that's the 10, 5, 2, gets smaller and smaller. Beyond 75, you start to get into some stability. So we don't like to look at less than 75. So if you're just looking at a population as a cohesive whole, you could just have 75. Where I got into this bar chart example where I was starting to screen things and filter on, say, women, that's when now you need a larger sample size, because now you need 150 if you want women and men. So for example, in this study, I don't know if everyone can see what I'm highlighting here, but there were 601 people in the study. And so when I filtered on females, I got 307. So our platform at least will tell you how many people you're working with. And I think if you go too small, I think it gives you a warning. Yeah. So it gives you this sort of yellow, because now you're down to 25 people. You really shouldn't be doing that. It won't stop you, but it's giving you that warning that you really shouldn't be doing that.
Got it. Are there, specific ways, like let's say, hey, there's like a handful of demographics that I'm particularly interested in their responses to a survey, can I make sure that the survey respondents are like fit that demographic profile so that I can go at,
Yeah, I didn't want to get too much into like the how do you set up a study, but the way that you set up a study is you create what's called a screener. So if you're looking for only women, you look for women. If you're looking for men, if you're looking for an age group, if you're looking for pet owners, if you're looking for parents, whatever it might be, you would have that in the screener. You would screen those people out. With the study that I did here for understanding the needs, I screened out anyone that doesn't cook dinner at least once a week. Doesn't prepare dinner at least once a week, which again is most people, but still it's good to get anyone out that's not relevant to you.
Got it. Awesome. Well, I don't have any other questions myself.
I think there are a few questions about the this jobs to be done study. If, for example, someone said that they don't cook, let's say, what could be like the pain point for that? Is this something that we need to kind of identify at the beginning, I guess?
Maybe. Yeah, that's a tough one because there's a huge barrier there. Like if you're a company that focuses, like McCain, for example, on the weeknight dinner, you have a massive barrier to turn a non-cooker into a cooker. I don't know if McCain is going to be able to overcome that. And there's not that many people. So there's not really a good reward there. So you'd have to think of another, and I can't spontaneously think of one off the top of my head, where there's a lot of people who don't do something. So you've got a big addressable audience, and then you can start to focus in on that and then move those people in. So, I mean, for example, like 20 years ago, it would have been people who don't own a cell phone. Like I'm old enough that I remember when pagers were still a thing. So people who don't own a cell phone, there was a massive addressable market where you could move people into the cell phone market. Then you would talk to non-users and say, okay, how do we change that behavior? I would say with the dinner one, it's a tougher example because there's not that many people. It's going to be a huge barrier. Maybe they don't own a kitchen. Maybe they hate cooking. So probably I wouldn't focus on that.
I have another question, if you don't mind. Do you find that brands going through the jobs to be done framework use the framework obviously for innovation, but it sounds like there's almost some opportunity to even just redefine the problem set that you're seeking to kind of serve as a brand and potentially even update your brand messaging or marketing through some of these. Do you find that projects designed for that purpose are materially different than projects designed for innovation purposes, or am I thinking about that too granularly?
No, I totally agree with you. That's the point that I started trying to get at when I said that innovation isn't just about new products. And this is something that was, I was going to say beaten into me, but that sounds like a horrible experience. It's something that was reinforced when I was at Kraft in the most positive way possible. Is that innovation isn't just about new products. So communication innovation is a form of innovation. And that could be, I changed my packaging because my packaging is pushing my product into a more clinical space. And what I've missed is the pleasure that could come from consuming my product, for example. So I repackage it. That is still a form of innovation. It's not just new products.
Yeah, it is. Just as a humorous note, it is funny hearing you say that because I spent a pretty significant portion of my career at the Clorox company and doing a lot of these jobs to be done framework conversations on the Hidden Valley brand. And so both Kraft and Hidden Valley at the end of the day had leveled up a lot of these conversations to like, how do we want people to feel? What's the experience? What's that feeling? Yeah, a lot of it just you can level it up to a certain point where it starts to become a little bit ethereal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was actually for some reason I was thinking about that. And I rewatched this morning that Saturday Night Live skit. I don't know if anyone's seen it, where they're like, it's these two ad agencies and they're pitching like Super Bowl ads, and it's like how Cheetos is like solving like conflict between like minority groups and things like that. It's like Cheetos can just bring everyone together.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We have a few minutes, I'm sure, for other questions as they come in. I know, Michael's contact info is on these slides as well. Maybe Michael, if you want to drop additional like contact info into the chat right now if anyone who's on the line right now wants to reach out. Thank you so much. This was incredibly valuable. I appreciate how tactical it was, providing really, really good, easily actionable educational insights. So much appreciated.
Awesome. And I will include the deck, which has like some pretty nice prescriptive, like do this and then do this and then do this directions in it.
Absolutely. And for everyone on the call and you know, for anyone that you guys know that may have registered and not shown up today, just so you know, everyone is going to get that presentation. Once the recording is processed and posted, we'll send an email out to everyone who's registered, kind of pointing in that direction. And then, you know, if you have other questions that come up throughout the week, again, we'll have, you know, the opportunity to answer those questions all throughout the week in the Slack community. And I'm sure beyond just this coming week, if you reach out to their team, I'm sure they're always happy to answer any of these questions as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Peter, for hosting, and Lenara for attending on your Saturday.
Yeah,
and for everyone who made the time to be here.
Yep. All right.